Alright guys, today we're going to take a look at 5 sleepers who could make the Cincinnati Bengals roster in training camp. So obviously making a roster in training camp is not really that impossible, especially because players are going to be added to the roster and cut from the roster left and right. Obviously, you're not to a point where preseason's here, so you have to worry about, the team having to cut down from 70 man all the way down to 53. But still, if you saw it slacking off and not doing good in training camp, you're going to go down the rankings. Every single training camp, every single day of training camp, somebody is moving up and someone is moving down. So let's go ahead and talk about 5 players who could make the roster. Starting off right away, we're going to go with Sidney Jones. So Sidney Jones is an interesting one. The reason why is because he got picked up before they drafted DJ Turner in the second round. But let's be honest, it was kind of known that they were looking to take a cornerback in this last NFL draft, especially with Cheeto's injury last year. We needed some kind of depth at, the cornerback position to help us out. Also, we needed to maybe put that cornerback possibly at safety if something did go awry, and for example, Nick Scott is not able to, hold down our secondary, or Dax Hill was struggling. We need someone who can kind of be a rotational piece. So that's honestly why Sidney Jones probably will make the roster, is because of, again, number one, Cheeto's still recovering and rehabbing from his injury. He is back at training camp. He is practicing. But again, you never know if there will be any setbacks or, any problems or complications moving forward. So having Sidney Jones on the roster avoids any of those problems. You got to keep in mind, he was a former second-round pick in 2017. And to be honest, yeah, he hasn't, done crazy things in the NFL, but he's been a pretty productive backup player. And the more players you have that can actually run a defense efficiently is the better. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him even getting more reps with the first team because of rotations, right? Because again, at the end of the day, cornerback is the one position where you want to have the most depth possible. I say offensive line and secondary. You want the most depth because at every single play, somebody can go down with injury. Someone could be too tired, concussions, you name it. Things happen in the secondary. So he's number 5 on who might make this list upcoming. Number 4. Number 4 is going to be a tight end, and that's Tanner Hudson. Now, you might not know who Tanner Hudson is. The reason why is because he's the 4th-string tight end on the Cincinnati Bengals. He sits behind Drew Sample and Mitchell Wilcox, and actually the 5th tight end, I just realized, because the former Patriot Devin is actually above Tanner Hudson. So Tanner Hudson is a 6'5", 240-pound tight end. He played 2 seasons for Tampa Bay, then went to San Francisco, and then went to the Giants, and now he's on our squad. He is 29 years old, and to be honest, if he's going to make the roster, it's mainly because Mitchell Wilcox cannot stay healthy. If Mitchell Wilcox continues to have injury concerns, they might move on from him, and they might go ahead and just keep, somebody like Tanner Hudson in that spot. Now, of course, he's going to have to really ball out in training camp, but if we're being honest, behind Irv Smith, everything else in this tight end group is absolutely open for anyone to take. Mitchell Wilcox, like I said before, he has injuries. Drew Sample has had injuries before. Devin, I don't think there's too much, people fighting for him to stay on this roster at this moment in time. So Tanner Hudson could definitely work his way up to, being a backup tight end or maybe a 3rd-string tight end on this team. Now, keep in mind, he does have a lot of NFL experience. So that's another thing that, they might look at. And if he saw catching some good passes, especially now with Trevor Siemian at quarterback, it's very possible he makes the roster as a 3rd, or he gets at least the practice squad. The next guy on this list is number 3, and that's going to be Devonshaw Maxwell. Now, you might not know who this is, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. He did play a total of 5 years at college. He played for the Mocs. Just to show you guys. Played for the Mocs. And in college, he did have 28 sacks, and that was a loss of 151 yards, 4 forced fumbles. Let's be honest. Okay, he played for a small school, okay? He played for Tennessee, a very small school, so there isn't much, going into this that you're like, okay, this guy could be an absolute monster. But at the same time, though, if we look at where he is on the depth chart, he is way back here. So you might say automatically, well, there's zero chance that he's going to make the active roster. Come on now. What are you talking about? Well, again, with training camp, you can really make a name for yourself. If you start getting past the blockers, getting after the quarterback, keep in mind, he's not going to be first team on the first team. And that's what I think a lot of people need to realize is that you're not, whenever you're a backup like this and you're like on that category, I would say, you're not going against the first team guys. You're going against the fourth team, the third team, right? So you're working your way up. And if you're going against the fourth team and you're destroying everyone in the fourth team, then guess what happens? You work your way up to the third team. Then you can work your way up to the second team. And if you're really that good, first team. But again, usually players never go from fourth to first. But my point is, you can work your way up. So he's not going to be going against, Orlando Brown. He's going against, right now Devin Cochran's on PUP. But Donta Smith. He's going against Smith here. And if he can destroy him constantly, he can work his way up. There's no, mystery here. Listen, DJ Reader's in the last year of his contract. I want them to bring him back, and I think they will bring him back. But it's possible he doesn't come back, depending on what he wants contract-wise and if the Bengals can work out a contract with him. We just saw Jesse Bates, Hayden Hurst, and Von Bell leave. It's possible DJ Reader, this is his last season. So with that being said, they want to find someone who is going to eventually become his replacement. Because even if it's not his last season, he's 30 years old, right? So he's getting up there in age, and eventually they're going to have to move on. And if they can find someone, I'm not saying 1000% Maxwell here is the guy, but it's very possible players have gone from undrafted to becoming superstars. Next guy on this list, number 2, is going to be my man Calvin Tyler Jr. So it's pretty clear right now the starting running back on this roster is Joe Mixon, right? Number 2 is Chase Brown. But the competition right now for the third down back is between Travion Williams and everyone else. And if we look at Travion Williams and we look at his spot right here, I know in the depth chart it hasn't been number 2, but he is number 3. He's the third down back. It's between him, Chris Evans, Calvin Tyler, and Jacob Sayers. Now, let's talk about Calvin Tyler Jr. Who is he? Why is he important? Well, in college, he did play for Oregon State. The last 2 years when he fully got the job and fully got the start, he was an absolute animal. Now, he is a bell cow back. He's not a receiving back. And that's what really will hurt him here, is that he would be, theoretically speaking, another bell cow back in the system, while, Travion Williams and the third down back we're looking for is more of a receiving back. Now, I do believe Chase Brown will become, in the end here, more of a receiving back for us, and he'll kind of be that Travion Williams, but a lot better. But that's why, if we are talking about Calvin Tyler here, he would, theoretically speaking, have to beat out Joe Mixon. Well, not beat out Joe Mixon, but he would be a running back that really wouldn't, how do I put this? He wouldn't be competing with Travion's job, right? He'd be competing with strictly, behind Joe Mixon's job, which is right now where Chase Brown is. So, it's not impossible, right? It's not impossible. But it's going to be difficult for Calvin Tyler Jr. to make this roster, because in the theory that he makes this roster, they would most likely be letting go Travion Williams and Chris Evans. Which, again, Travion Williams not making the roster is not insane to say, but, he's a bell cow back. So that means they would have 2 bell cow backs and then Chase Brown, which they would then want him to be a receiving back, which is possible. They could end up doing that. So, it's possible he makes the roster. Number 1, Carter. To put a wide receiver on this list is absolutely insane when we have the most stacked receiving core in the NFL. But here's why he's on this list. Because behind Charlie Jones, it is wide open. Now, Carter in college, 342 yards, 489 yards, 290, 240, 56. He didn't put up crazy stats, right? But again, like I said, if he can put up crazy stats in training camp, he can make this roster. Right now, after you go through Charlie Jones, it's Andre, Trent Irwin, who's going to make the team, but the 6th receiver is going to be Andre, Stanley Morgan, Trent Taylor, the 2nd, Jackson, Mack, or Carter. It's going to be one of those guys. One of those players is going to make the 6th receiver spot. So, who is it? Well, we'll have to wait and see, but Carter has a chance. So, keep an eye out on him because he could definitely, start moving up the ranks if he starts catching some really good passes. Got to keep in mind that, Andre, yes, we just drafted him in the 6th round, but on Wednesday, I think it was, he dropped a lot of passes. He had a bad day. He had a really, really bad day. So if Carter plays really good and Andre has a really bad day, stock up, stock down. Keep an eye out on that, guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.